It was 20 years ago. I was on my way to meet a population caught up in a war imposed by the biggest and most powerful army in the world, the Russian army. As the months passed, hiding in the mountains, villages, and trenches with those men, women, and children, I discovered a magnificent country. I also discovered a people with a magnificent soul. Their eyes spoke volumes. They spoke of inner depths, beauty, and suffering caused by years of war, exile, and famine. I met a people who had lived through not only the worst period in their own history, but the worst period in the history of mankind. During those years in Afghanistan and elsewhere, I discovered as a young photojournalist war and the world at its most cruel. Not only in Afghanistan, but also in Soweto in South Africa, in the refugee camps of Pakistan, followed later by those of Rwanda, Burundi, Lebanon war, the tragedy of the Palestine, Karabakh, the Philippines, the Sarajevo. It's impossible to remain a spectator. I began to think more deeply about wars, repression, exile, and the countless death they produce. I discovered people with solutions too. The Red Cross workers are pioneers of humanity. The French doctors, as they were rightly called in the 70s, have taken on the physical reconstruction of those most in need. But when the guns fall silent and the armies withdraw, what is most urgently needed is tangible reconstruction. An army of spedsmen sets off to remove all trace of ruin. Non-profit organizations build roads, houses, schools, clinics, and other infrastructure. Others devote themselves to healing bodily suffering, offering artificial limbs, operations, vaccination, bandage, and crutches to overcome the handicaps and suffering caused by war. But there is also an invisible form of destruction, most difficult to heal, that of damaged dignity, that of wounded soul, that of wounded culture. These gaping wounds to the soul, buried in the deepest part of one's being, can in the long term undermine efforts to physically rebuild a country and prevent an entire nation from getting back on its feet. The culture of war breeds more war. People who aren't given intellectual and cultural weapons have just one reference: the deafening noise of guns. That's why Aina came into being. Aina means mirror in Farsi. It is a mirror held out to people who are searching for an identity they lost through years of war, so they can rediscover their own lost heritage. Aina helps create independent media organization and expression of culture in all its diverse forms, in places where freedom of expression is still a fragile concept. Aina calls itself a third-generation humanitarian organization whose activities seek to heal wounded souls by providing logistical support and training for local working in the media and culture. Today in Afghanistan, Aina is supporting the creation of civil society and democratization after more than 2 decades of war. Aina has media and culture centers in Kabul and 7 other cities: Herat, Mazar Sharif, Kunduz, Jalalabad, Khost, Ghazni, and Kandahar. Hopefully, other towns will soon have their own independent media and cultural centers. In these 8 centers, hundreds of Afghans are working in the media and cultures in a variety of fields. To date, Aina has supported 8 publications: the women's magazines, Malalai and Sirat, weekly newspaper Kabul Weekly, children's magazine Parwaz, society magazine Sabaun, the satirical review Zambil Gham, and Afghanistan's first French magazine Le Nouvel de Kabul, and soon the first English magazine. And Aina News, a sort of weekly international press review, so Afghans can read what the world thinks and writes about them and their country. In video, Aina has sought to train Afghan women to tell the story of their country over the last 20 years, based on accounts by other Afghan women who make up 50% of the population. This is their story. It is the camera woman trained by Aina who film and interview these women and tell their stories. In this way, we discover another Afghanistan seen through women's eyes from a point of view of the world that has been hidden away from many, many years. Then there are photojournalists, around 15 young men and women who are among the first Afghan photojournalists and also the first female Afghan photojournalists. Aina has set up a radio department run by Afghan women called Afghan Women Voices, and a mobile cinema unit designed to travel from village to village, both to educate people who cannot read newspapers or magazines. These educational films are a genuine form of informal visual education for villagers who live in the remotest parts of the country. Aina is open to all forms of cultural activities, from exhibitions of photographs, painting, theater, concerts, everything that can provide the Afghan people with a breeze of cultural life. In its production and training activities, Aina uses up-to-date technology, aware of the gap between media professionals in the West and those in Afghanistan in terms of modern logistical support. Aina has sought to provide these tools of freedom to Afghanistan. I mean tools of freedom, everything that we have acquired in the West that Afghans have yet to obtain. Aina supports a group of people whose activities in the culture and the journalistic life of their country are part of Afghans' education in peace and freedom. I remember one day in 1990 when I was working for the United Nations in the North province of Badakhshan. I was handing out wheat to people who were building roads, irrigation canals and clinics. One day, when I was walking on a village, I heard children laughing. I turned round and saw a young boy coming out of school with a little plant in his hand. He had learned at school to look after it. He had watered the clod of earth carefully, and out of it a shoot had grown. So the teacher had let him take it home. He was so proud that his eyes shone. When I took this photo, I asked him, "What are you going to do with your plant?" His answer is perhaps one of the reasons why I founded Aina, and perhaps one of the reasons why I still return to this country time and again, and also maybe one of the reasons that still I'm doing what I do. He said, "I'm going to grow a tree out of this plant." Today, Aina is like that plant. Its roots are in the rich cultural soil of Afghanistan and the world. I hope it will become a tree of culture and peace, today in Afghanistan and tomorrow in every country where freedom of expression is still fragile.